I think if I'm going to answer that, to provide a more concise answer to that question around what I think pride is about, it is about like the constant exploration of and development of spaces that bring joy, that where joy can still emerge even in a society that is constantly aiming to eradicate us, but also that it is beyond my individual kind of like desires and more towards a collective imagining and constructions of a queer brown utopia.
Greetings, Unhidden Voices family. Welcome. It's season 2, episode 1. We have a lot to thank you for. We are growing, we're expanding, and we're celebrating our growth in our work. Please visit our new website, unhiddenvoices.org. This first episode, our guest is José Ramón Lizárraga. They are a dear friend, and they are celebrating that they won a Webby Award for their work with their pup, RuPaul. So listen, learn, and amplify with us.
Oh.
Oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. And look, you have your cow shirt.
I had to wear my cow shirt today.
Oh my, yes. Go Bears. 100.
Oh my God, I miss the Bay Area so much. You have no idea.
Oh my gosh. Well, we miss you too.
Idea.
The Bay Area absolutely misses you. 100.
It's awful over here. It's so bad over here.
Oh my God. Okay, so we have to get into that.
We'll get into that after the outside of the recording.
Okay. All right. Well,
I have stories.
So first of all, we have to just do for the audience, have you introduce yourself and kind of talk a little bit about how we know each other. Oh
my gosh.
And how's Arturo?
He's downstairs. He's doing research on video game play, and he's writing a paper about these young Black kids who use Grand Theft Auto as spaces to talk about social political issues and to protest and do all the stuff. So he's on a video game call right now with them. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty dope.
So cool. So cool. Oh my gosh. The two of you, okay, look at me with that crazy mouth.
What happened? Not all teeth.
Oh God, that's so
like
funny.
Coming at me. Your teeth are like.
Oh God, this is too much. Okay, I'm gonna go to my standard this.
I'm gonna have nightmares.
Oh wow.
That's why can't the camera, when it shuts down, why can't it freeze in the most flattering way, right?
Thank you.
It never freezes when you're like giving good face. It always freezes when you're like, you're about to scratch your nose and it looks like you're picking it, or
God, it's so right. It's so right.
I know someone needs to write a paper about that.
Yes, 100%. So for the audience, we met in grad school, and actually I met you through your husband first, because I met Arturo first.
Oh, that's true.
Right.
So I'm Dr. José Ramón Lizárraga, also known as Dr. Thembot on social media, or Sapo. Some people know me as Sapo. I am an assistant professor of learning sciences and human development at the University of Colorado Boulder. I've been here for about 2 years. But yes, Dr. Norris and I met, oh my God, I think it was almost 10 years ago.
It was 10 years ago. It was more than 10 years ago. It was almost, because when did you start Berkeley?
I think I met you in either 2010 or 2011.
Okay, yes, because I met Arturo in 2009, right?
You met Arturo in
2008. Yeah, I started in 2008. He started 2009, and you started 2010 or 20.
I started 2012.
2012. Oh,
Yeah,
you started 2012?
yeah. So I met you through, what was that called? Pioneers? What was it called?
Oh my God.
At
Education
Pioneers.
Pioneers. That's right.
That's the
That's
first time I
right.
met you. Arturo, you and Arturo were in Ed Pioneers,
That's
and I
right.
met you in downtown Oakland at a party, at a
Oh,
reception for
that's
Ed
right.
Pioneers.
That's right. Oh gosh. Oh, this is a
I know.
throwback.
I remember, like, I tell
Uh,
you, when I tell you that I remember everything, like I'm like an elephant. Not only do I have skin like an elephant up here because of I need more lotion in Colorado, but like I remember things that Arturo's like, how do you remember that? Like I remember, I remember, I
wow.
remember the flower arrangements. It's really, really bizarre.
Oh, that's
Um,
beautiful.
so I met you at that party. It was the Ed Pioneers, like end of the year, something or other. I don't know what it was. And I was still working at the Quaker school. I hadn't, I hadn't even thought about going to grad school yet. Um, and I, in 2011 is when I started grad school, but I started at Stanford to get my MA. And
Yes.
then I went in 2012, started the program at, at Berkeley.
At Berkeley. Okay. Okay. Oh wow. Because I was on my way out then. Like it's if I'm not even going to try this camera anymore. I'm just so done with you. This camera's
Now the teeth, well,
that's
the
it.
teeth are less aggressive right now. There's a little
Like,
bit
at
less.
least that's better. That is better. But like my eyes look so, I don't know. Is that pensive? I don't know.
I know. It's like, I don't know what Dr. Norris is, what kind
Oh,
of, what's she smoking over there.
God.
Um,
Oh no.
uh,
Oh wow. And the thing I was literally just sharing with my research team
mhm,
because they are we're one of them is our research coordinator is training all of us on how to use SPSS software
oh,
to
nice.
do, right? And so I said that when I was in grad school in my second year, Arturo
Mhm,
was my graduate student instructor,
yep.
and without Arturo, I would not have been able. I remember just that I did all of my data, got it all wrong, and literally he held my hand, through the whole thing. Just sat with me and and I remember, and I told my students that he said, there's so much in stereotypes about the capacity for women to do this.
Yep.
And this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this work.
Yep.
And I'm going to sit here with you until you get it. And that's what Arturo did. And so at that point, well, probably before then, but that was definitely when we became brother and sister, and I was just like, this is such an amazing human being. And then obviously just fell in love with you also. And so you had me in tears yesterday. I literally was just so moved by your post, and I know there's so many things that I want to just have people learn about you and just your experiences. And I was like, okay, let me just ask. And so I'm so glad that you're able to join us today. So I just really am. And I appreciate you so very, very much. I just totally appreciate you. And I love you. So, okay, I'm gonna get weepy.
I'm like shutting down my heart right now. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna cry. I'm an ugly crier. It's not gonna happen. So I'm just gonna nod.
But I've been using your the piece that you wrote in the hashtag identity book. And for everyone,
Yeah.
that book is free. It's available open source. But
Yes.
they want this wonderful piece about gentrification and the impact of it on the trans community here in San Francisco, where they both lived here in San Francisco. And so before they both became professors in Colorado. And so is this your second or third year in Colorado?
I'm finishing up my second year
Wow.
as
Okay.
a tenure track faculty member here. And here comes little RuPaul just
Oh,
barging in, opening the door. What are you looking for? Oh, you hid that treat behind the door. Go eat it. Anyway, Yes, the second year. It's second year of tenure track, and uh, 7, 8 months into the our first year, the pandemic happened. So it has been a pretty unusual
Mm-hmm.
start to our tenure track journey here at.
Oh my, I can't even imagine that. I visited Colorado last month to see
Oh,
my daughter
oh, I did
because
not know that.
Leilani lives in Aurora.
Oh, I
Yeah,
did not know that.
so she and Zachariah moved there last July, and she's stationed at the Air Force Base there.
Right.
She was start right, and so I hadn't been able to see her because of COVID, so I hadn't seen her or the baby since they moved.
Wow.
So it was such an she actually, that's not true. They did come home, but I hadn't been to Colorado ever. So that was my first
Hmm.
time. And we drove up to the Royal Gorge, and
Gorgeous.
it's so beautiful, so beautiful. Just absolutely and people were nice. I have to say, I did notice that. I mean, it's very white though. That was hard to, I guess,
Yep.
I was like trying to get accustomed. I was like, wow, this is different. I mean, it's friendly, but I think that it was. So, can you talk a little bit about what your experience has been like with culture shock? Because
Yeah.
it has to be completely different than what you're used to living in the Bay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's multi-layered and complicated because I'm born and raised in California. So I have had most of my life to build community there, to understand the intricacies of whiteness and navigating white spaces in California, right? And so it has been a pivot and a shift to come here. And not only is it a very white space, and we live in Boulder, which is even whiter than 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 most parts of Colorado.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the the initial type of things that we were trying to do as soon as we moved here was to build community, right? Um, Build coalition and so on. And it's been difficult because the pandemic happened again, and so we haven't really built that community here. Um, and so it's been difficult. I will say that Boulder and at least parts, they call it the corridor between Boulder and Denver,
Mhm.
tends to be very liberal.
Yeah, yeah.
And even though it's very white, it's liberal in its politics. And so, but it's hard because it's not the type of progressive liberal. We
Yeah.
lean a little bit more towards the progressive liberal in California, or at least in the communities that you and I are steeped in California. So it's different. It's different. It, the unfortunate thing with the pandemic is that we haven't been able to kind of explore
Yeah.
and build our community here. A lot of what we've been doing is keeping in touch with our communities in in the Bay Area. And in our work, we've actually been doing a lot of virtual online with our course that we taught in the summer, teaching teachers and parents from all over the country, not just in Colorado. So um, it's that's the way that we've been kind of navigating some of the culture shock that we experienced when we first got here. We're hopeful now that things are starting to open up a little bit more,
Yes,
that
yes,
we'll be
yes.
able to like we haven't found our brown and black community here yet. We just haven't. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and so how far is Boulder from Denver? Like how far are you?
We're about 35 to 40 minutes. So
Okay, so that's not because I think that's how far Aurora is.
probably, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was like that was a tough just getting used to that. Like, just like, oh, to see a city, I have to everything was flat too. I wasn't expecting
It's
that.
different than the Bay Area, right? The
It
Bay Area, you're
was.
used to driving an hour and a half to drive 11 miles. but
Exactly
like
right.
you can see the city, even if you are
Exactly.
like in bumper to bumper traffic, you still feel like you're in the city. It's different here. Like you're literally driving for 40 minutes and not seeing anything.
Exactly
And then
right.
there it is. There's a city.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
And yeah. Okay. So I wonder, and I wanted you to talk more about RuPaul, first of
Yeah.
all, because I see you're in the Webby, and so you have a lot to celebrate, right? So
Yeah.
share with us, like, because we can't, I know you mentioned that RuPaul joined you in the room, but we can't see RuPaul because of the background. So can you tell us about RuPaul?
Yeah, of course. Um, RuPaul emerged from certain things that we encountered around gender politics when we first got our little puppy. Um, and I'm not sure if you know the story, but when we first adopted them, and we use the pronouns them, she, him, like we just use any any pronouns that
Okay.
occur to us depending on the context. But when we first got the pup, we didn't realize how obsessed people were going to be about the dog's gender. And in fact, whenever we would, and our dog is cute, so people want to like come up and meet him or her when we're walking around the neighborhood. And when we first adopted um, RuPaul, people would come up and ask us, "Oh, is it a boy or a girl?" And Arturo would say, and I would say it sometimes as well, would say, "Well, they haven't decided their gender yet." And
That's good. I
and
love
it,
that.
and it's San Francisco, so if you say that about people, like there's respect, right? Like, and it happens, like and but when we said that about our dog, people freaked out. Like it was really, really bizarre.
Really?
Yeah. And at least in a couple, maybe two or three occasions, people literally looked under our dog to look at his genitalia to see what the gender was, because they were so angry that we wouldn't tell them what the gender of our dog was. And so we were like, wow, that's really kind of bizarre.
Yeah, it is. It
It's
absolutely
weird.
is.
Um,
No, it that strike, the other day we were driving in the car, and Zachariah, he just spent his first year in kindergarten in Colorado. So he says he's talking and he's saying things like, oh, because he plays t-ball. It's like, oh, he hits like a girl, And then my daughter, my youngest daughter, is like, Zachariah, that's sexist. And it's like, but he doesn't understand that terminology, So then when he said about the color, like pink is a girl's color.
right.
And then like we were talking and we're like, yeah, no, colors don't have, gender. Like any color you like is just the color that you like, right? Like why and you can wear whatever color you want. But that was just like being able to express that to a 5-year-old. I can't even imagine like with adults and how, like, why they would be so rigid, let's say,
Right.
in their construction of what it means to be be gendered. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, it's bizarre, and I think it's interesting that that it still permeates across our different parts of our lives, right? That somehow it's a hard thing to let go of. the Our desire and compulsion to gender things and know these things. But when that happened, it's when I started playing with the idea of dressing our dog in drag and creating an Instagram account that would do that, right? And there were other doggy drag queens or people who were putting wigs on their dogs and so on. So we weren't necessarily the first people, but we happened to do it during a time that RuPaul's Drag Race started becoming mainstream. They had moved that year from being on Logo TV, which is kind of like not a mainstream channel, to VH1, which is a mainstream cable channel. And so there was gaining popularity of the show, and that's when our dog first became viral. RuPaul started retweeting some of our and sharing some of our content, and other really prominent drag queens started sharing our content. And so RuPaul became like a thing in 2017. That's when it started. And drag celebrities started kind of like recognizing our dog, and spreading the word about our little Chihuahua, who was considered the world's first doggy drag queen. And there were several articles that were written back then in 2017. But it became when we wrote that chapter that you mentioned earlier, the hashtag identity chapter, we had been in earnest exploring the power of drag and in public pedagogy and in social media. And so we had a follow-up article that we wrote last summer called, oh my God, what is it called? I think it's Joteria Cyborg Pedagogies. And it's a follow-up on the book chapter where we start bringing in rice a little bit more, and we start talking about Latinx drag queens. And we actually started exploring how the cyborg pedagogy that happens online can actually start pushing beyond the boundaries of the Anthropocene, or what we commonly do is center the human experience. And start thinking about how RuPaul, our little Chihuahua, can be part of a different type of engagement with our more than human counterparts or beings. And so we wrote, it was great that we got to finally write about our Chihuahua as part of our work, as not just something that is kind of like a hobby, but that is actually it's very informed by what we're interested in exploring around drag and public pedagogy. And so then, this whole thing happened with the Webby nomination. We were the underdog, literally. Wait.
I have to pause you for 1 second before you go, because you said cyborg pedagogy, and yes. Can you explain what that is?
Oh, sure.
For the audience.
Yes. So the idea is that building on Donna Haraway and others who have explored this idea that in our society or in our current world, we and it's something that I'm writing about as well, that is going to be published hopefully in Mind Culture Activity not too long from now. We explore how we as everyday beings are cyborgs, and that we are not only digital technologies, but other technologies that exist and tools that exist in our world enhance our humanity and our ability to connect to each other, not only to make meaning, but to also to transform the world and imagine new social futures. So the cyborg is basically a description of how we are augmented by the tools that we have in our everyday lives, and make us a little bit more than human. And in the way that I'm trying to articulate, and Don Haraway has done this as well, is to think about how we can engage beyond the Anthropocene and start being so human-centric, and start thinking about how we can engage with the natural world and the more than human world.
I think that concept is absolutely beautiful. And I really believe, or I'm coming to believe, that it's through our capacity as cyborgs that we've actually been able to build a friendship, a relationship, a sisterhood, brotherhood, because we obviously haven't, I think we've met in person potentially, you remember because your memory is so good, but it's probably can count on one hand.
Yep.
Right. The time.
And mostly parties.
Right. And conferences, right? AERA. Yeah.
Exactly.
But to be able to actually see you every day.
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form, right? So absolutely, 100%, I agree with that concept.
Yeah, and often one of the things that I try to kind of problematize is mainstream portrayals of what the cyborg is, which is that technology is somehow like um, transform us, and either it strips us of our humanity or we become too technocentric, right? That we become too dependent on technology. And my exploration of the cyborg, and I would say that Donna Haraway as well has done this, is more about like, no, it's like there are certain elements about our humanity that are centered in this exploration of the cyborg, and that we reconfigure ourselves in order to achieve that mutual connectivity, the mutual recognition of humanity, and the mutual endeavor of transforming the world for the better, for towards equity and towards justice.
That's so powerful and beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. Okay, so then how does that connect to RuPaul and the Webby?
Yeah. RuPaul has kind of become kind of part of that cyborg project, and the article I'm happy to send you the link so that you can share it with your audience. The article, we explore how through technology, but also me as a human actor and our dog's kind of presence in the digital world, we're able to do the things that I just described around connecting to each other and trying to work towards equity and justice. But our pup has become kind of a source of joy, and especially during the pandemic, an unexpected kind of beacon of joy for not only the queer community but beyond. At least that's what our fans have been telling us, right?
Yeah.
But when we received the nomination, we were an underdog. I was actually very surprised that we received the nomination because, the Webby, much like the Oscars, has like different categories. There are the categories that are seen more publicly, which is, the person of the year kind of categories, and then there are the other categories which are more specific around certain type of content and platforms. And we were nominated for being kind of an influential pet or animal in social media.
Wow. What a
And the interesting thing is that we were the only ones who had like, so we were nominees alongside four other celebrity animals or accounts. All of them are verified, meaning that they're kind of like already well known. Although we're well known, but we're not verified, meaning that we're not like super famous. And so we didn't think we were going to win because we were the underdog. Uh, Pun intended. So there were two. So the Webby has each category has two winning opportunities, meaning that you have the opportunity to win the statue, the Webby, by virtue of voting that happens within the Academy, and the Academy of, I think it's the International Digital Arts Academy. You can win it if the Academy votes for you, or you can win it if the public votes for you. So there's two trophies for each category. There's the People's Voice, and then there's the one that's now voted by the Academy. And so we were like, there's no way that we're going to get the People's Voice because that depends on how many followers you have and so on. And the other accounts that we were not nominated with had like 1 million followers, and we don't have 1 million followers. So we were like, there's no way we're gonna win.
Yeah. Wow.
And we're like, well, it's a long shot that we would get the Academy one, because literally the other ones have like, they're beautiful accounts. They have, we just didn't think. And so we were shocked when we got the email saying you won.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Because
That is
really,
congratulations. So wait, so you won the Academy one? Okay, which one did you win? You
we
won
won
the
the
one that you
Academy
didn't think there's, oh my
the
God.
Academy voted for ours because of the content that we create and the types
Oh, oh, that's so
yeah, and
wonderful.
impact and so on. So it's a great
Oh,
honor. It's
yes, it
amazing.
is. Yes, it is.
The people who won the People's Voice one, unsurprisingly, was her name. The dog's name is Frenchie, Izzy the Frenchie or something like that. It's a Frenchie dog. There's also they dress the dog up in drag as well.
Mhm.
But that they have 1.2 million followers, so they just told their fans vote for us. There was no way.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
they were not gonna win the People's. I mean, they had 1.2 million. They like it's just it wasn't gonna happen. So it's a great honor. We're still waiting on our trophies because apparently it's the same people. They're custom made, and the same people who make the Golden Globe make the statue. So
That is so phenomenal. That is truly just absolutely phenomenal. And I'm so happy for you. That is so great. Okay, so I want to ask you, what does pride mean to you?
Yeah. It's that's such a great question, especially given the fact that, and I didn't even realize this when we set up this interview, but today is the 5th anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shootings in Orlando, Florida. Where close to 50 people lost their lives, predominantly Black and brown queer people.
Yeah.
The safe space that or a symbol. The Pulse nightclub was a symbol of the types of spaces where I felt safe, where I could express my pride, right?
Yeah.
Not only my pride of being queer, but my pride of like of my brownness and my Latinidad and so on. And so that shooting kind of I remember when it happened 5 years ago, how it kind of shifted my notion of what pride is, right? Which is um, a concrete engagement beyond me as an individual, and more towards how pride is a collective endeavor that has to be constantly shifting and changing, right? And it is about co-designing and co-imagining new possible futures, which in many ways doesn't it's hard to see. And as Jose Esteban Munoz wrote, may he rest in power, the not yet here, a queer future is not something that can be a queer utopia is not something that has existed before.
Yeah.
And even these bar spaces, or these spaces that could, for many intents and purposes, can be concrete queer utopias, especially for queer brown and Black utopias. That incident that happened 5 years ago made it really salient that they can be very ephemeral, and that they are still very much under threat because of homophobia, because of toxic masculinity, because of and because of white supremacy, and that all of this stuff that is still woven into the fabric of our society.
So part of what I think too is in this moment that we're in this year, and you spoke of like the learnings that you've had over the 5 years since the Pulse nightclub, but this year in particular has been, there's so much. So I want to know, what have you learned and how have you changed?
This past year in particular, oh my goodness. Wow. Well, there are many things that I've learned. Um, uh, I think one of the things that I have felt very strongly this year is that uh, not all queer movements are exist to uplift and to help Black and Brown communities in particular, right? I think there has been somewhat of somewhat of a revelation, not only for myself, but I think for many of us who are brown and are also our Black queer communities, who have kind of realized that, right? That there is somewhat of undercurrent of all that was a weird slip, all lives matter, all lives matter type of undercurrent in mainstream gay and queer movements. And so I think this last year in particular, it really has been about being unapologetic about, like, no, we're talking about Black and Brown queer lives at this moment, right? This is what has an importance around amplification, around the even the construction of, or the imagining of, these new queer futures. I'm talking about Afrofuturist type of queer futures, ones that center these experiences, and desires and hopes and desires, and almost pushing against those that have been, which is an interesting tension, because the RuPaul in particular, we in many ways rides the coattails of the mainstream type of uh, zeitgeist of what queer culture is, right? And in many ways, it has been deracialized. I think some of these RuPaul's Drag Race in particular, and other brands have pivoted. They have been a little bit more of like, okay, we are Black Lives Matter. We are going to amplify that. We can't be neutral anymore, because it's actually going to harm our brands. And so, but I would say that we were pushing on those boundaries even before. I mean, I think you know this, right? That many of our the projects that we are involved in have never been shy about that. But I think this past year, I think it has been more. I've learned that I actually need to be more explicit, because the machine is so big that it will like consume or absorb you into it, and people just assume that you are part of the larger zeitgeist of how of what queerness is, and how it should be consumed by the public, and so on. Arturo and I, for a long time, I feel, especially because the Academy, one of the things that I also have learned about the Academy is that the Academy will say, yes, oh, of course, we want queer, Black, and Brown people in the Academy, but they have very specific versions of what they find acceptable and palatable in the Academy, right? They don't mean queer, they mean gay when they talk about acceptability. Respectability is woven into all of how they expect us to engage in these spaces, right? Don't push too hard, don't be too queer. Make sure that you in many ways reproduce the heteronormative type of model of what a family looks like, in order for you to not push the envelope too much. And so I don't know if it's been the pandemic. I think I've always been this way, but I'm very unapologetic about who I am, and people love me for who I am, and the people who matter love me.
That's exactly right.
Because there are people who hate me. I can tell you that.
Well, F those people. I was like, I don't know, I just, that part, okay, is the part where it's like, there's always going to be hate, hateful people, right? And the sad part of it all is that we're always love is the only way, and so the love that we have for ourselves, the love we have for each other, that's the only way, because it heals and it restores,
Yeah.
and that's what we need in order to fight hate.
I tell you, and one of the things that I didn't realize about myself, especially because of a lot of things that have to do more about my own upbringing and who I am as a person, but I think because of my training, and you and I went to the best of the best universities, and we were trained by amazing scholars, and we've been lucky to have amazing mentors. But one of the things that I didn't realize about myself is how much, through my scholarship, I don't think I do this. Well, I guess I do it in other ways as well. There was, I didn't realize how much I still wanted to be, how much I sought people to appreciate my work and like me, and even if it is through my work, right? And what I didn't realize is that because my work is informed by who I am as a person, that you can't disentangle the fact that there are people who are just not going to like you and who are not going to love you and who are not going to love the work that you do. And that I just need to stop trying to convince those people that I'm deserving of their love and their care, right? It's hard. It's really, really, really hard, because I didn't realize that about myself, that I would just be respected for my work, or that somehow my work would convince people that I'm deserving of love and humanity.
So is that the growth then? Do you think that's how you've grown, is coming to that realization? And also perhaps, and is it now that you feel less need to, make these people feel comfortable with you and palatable?
I have to focus on the people who either have loved me already or who are capable of loving me, and for who I am, and the type of work that I do. And I can't waste any more time losing sleep over those who will never love me or care for me. It is growth. I think it is growth, but I think it's a political move for myself beyond the personal. I need to be mindful of where I put my labor and where I put my energy, because if I really do want to do work that's consequential, I needed to make that pivot. So.
Well, I am okay. Just wanted to thank you 100%. I do love you. I am so grateful to you. There have been so many times over this course of this decade that we have been in each other's lives where we just, our cyborgness has brought us to the capacity to really just be there for each other.
Yeah.
And it's and it has meant the world to me, and so I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
It's an honor. Thank you so much.
And and give Arturo a big hug and kiss for me. And RuPaul also. I think they're sleeping, but
they are so spoiled. I tell you.
People can know that Black people are dying statistically in real time from a new thing, and still not be intentional about how they navigate the new thing.
That's right.
So, yes,